the very first place you always start is with the mandatory gear list for that race. And so the one that I've put together, the yellow highlighting, is the mandatory gear for the Unbridled Women race, which is, it's on our website, but I've put it in this nice little spreadsheet. And again, I'll send that out to you. So I'm just gonna go through this, and it's broken down into individual gear, team gear, bike gear, paddling gear. And then my list also has a clothing section because we're gonna talk about some clothing. It has, if it's rainy or cold weather conditions, hopefully we're not gonna have to worry about that in August. Definitely not cold, I suspect. We're gonna be talking a lot more about how to manage body heat and keep your electrolytes up, because that's gonna be much more an issue for us than cold, I think. But so one thing to note, just because it's an individual gear item, it doesn't mean that you personally have to be carrying it. This race is open to teams of 3. And so it is undoubtedly gonna be the case that one team member, 2 team members are gonna be maybe a little stronger, maybe they've had a little more time to train, or for whatever reason, you know, you're not all 3 gonna be equally strong, equally fast. And so one of the things that you've got to sort of accept early on is that you're gonna have some team members who need more help. And so when I race with my teammate, Sarah, you know, my backpack looks like one of these little tiny purses that I wear on my back. And Sarah is wearing this like pack that weighs about 40 pounds, and she does it just for training effect and still tows me. So all of my individual gear, other than my food and hydration, which I want to have close to me to make sure I'm drinking enough and eating enough, pretty much everything else goes in her pack. I carry practically nothing on me because that would be stupid. Sarah is so much fitter, so much stronger, so much faster than I am that it makes no sense for me to be carrying this pack that's equally weighted to hers, because all I'm going to do is slow us down. And we both understand that she can't cross the finish line before me. So it does no good for me to be slower. We do everything we can to try to make us faster as a team. And so you've got to always be thinking about what do we do to make ourselves faster as a team, not as individuals, because you have to cross the finish line together. So even though it's on the individual gear list, it doesn't mean you're going to be carrying it. And when you go to choose your backpack, be thinking about, okay, what am I going to be carrying in my pack? You know, maybe if you're the stronger teammate, maybe you would only need a small pack, but you're going to be carrying some teammates' gear. So maybe you need to think about getting a bigger pack. Sarah only has big packs. My packs have been getting smaller and smaller over the years, and this is why. So let's start talking about the individual gear. The first thing I've got on my list is headlamp with spare batteries. So because this is mandatory gear, my headlamp with spare batteries is in my little mandatory gear bag. So all of these little personal items, little individual mandatory gear items, I'm going to put in my little mandatory gear bag. So this is a dry bag. This one actually has a little hole in it, but I just kind of put it together for this. I'm going to have a little dry bag that I can put all of my little mandatory items in that I'm going to carry in my pack. And it's clear. And the reason it's clear is because when I get into the transition area and the volunteer says, show me your headlamp with spare batteries, I don't want to be spending 5 minutes digging through my pack trying to find my headlamp with my spare batteries. I know that all of my little individual personal mandatory gear items are in this, and I can just go, whoop, headlamp, spare batteries. So this makes it super fast. You want to be thinking about, how do I pack my backpack to be most efficient? The things that I know I'm going to need, I want those to be readily accessible. The things that I've put in there as a safety backup that I'm probably not going to need, I'm going to stick those in the bottom of my pack. Teams lose so much time in transition areas. If you watch, you know, the best teams out there, they're the ones who like run through the transition area like a blur. And, you know, the teams who, if your value is fun, whatever, pack it however you want. If your value is win the race, be really intentional with how you pack. And it'll make your teammates a lot happier, because if your teammate goes whoop and you're the one who's rummaging through your backpack, disorganized, looking for stuff, that can create a lot of tension. The second item on my individual list, whistle. My whistle is not in here. And the reason my whistle is not in here is because I'm going to have my whistle on my pack. So I carry my whistle, and the knife is going to be on here too. My whistle and my knife, I keep on some string. I've got it on a little carabiner, and that's going to be hooked on my pack. Whatever pack it is I'm wearing, I'm putting that on there, and then I'm tucking it into a pocket, tucking it into my back where the bladder is. I want those to be readily accessible. These I do not want down in my pack, because the whole point is these are emergency items. And if I need help, I don't want these stuck down in my pack somewhere. I want to be able to get to these really quickly. So I always have my knife and my whistle. And when I go out to paddle, I'm going to put these on my PFD. So I'm going to take these off my backpack. I'm going to clip it onto my PFD so that I've got these readily accessible when I'm paddling. And then just don't forget when you get to the end of the paddle to get it back on your backpack. Better yet, if you've got 2 sets of these, keep one set on your PFD at all times, keep the other set on your backpack, because what you don't want to do is you get to the end of the paddle, you take your PFD off, you forget to take these off and put them on your pack, and then you're missing mandatory gear items later when you're out trekking. So it always helps to have a couple of sets of those if that's something that you're able to do. Okay, so those were the mandatory individual items. I'm going to go in my list to my recommended items, my little blue list items, which are things that I don't leave without. First thing for me is safety glasses with bifocals. So a lot of you have probably bike glasses that you wear. I wear these now all the time. These are my trekking, my paddling, and my biking glasses. And the reason is because they've got this little bifocal, which I need to read the map. I'm the navigator on our team, and I can't read fine detail anymore without these, especially if it's low light. So I've got, these are just clear, super inexpensive. These are like $9 or $12 or something. This, well, actually, these are not. These are more expensive. These are my good orienteering glasses. This is Vapro is the brand, V-A-P-R-O, Vapro. So they've got this nice little hinged thing, which is kind of handy. These are kind of highfalutin. I got these from a vendor at the World Masters Orienteering Championship. But you can get, oh, here's a pair of our super cheap ones. These are called Elvex, E-L-B-E-X. And these are perfectly acceptable. I wear these all the time too. And they're actually a little bit quicker to get on and off because they don't have that curved thing of the Vapros. So these you can get online. They're just like worker, you know, construction safety glasses is all they are with a bifocal. These are like 11 bucks or something like that. Again, that's Elvex, E-L-V-E-X. So even if you don't need the bifocal, I suggest safety glasses like that without the bifocal, and I suggest those for trekking because of all the stuff that you can get to poke you in the eye. So they're super handy on the trek as much as on the bike. Full-fingered gloves, I've got those under my individual and not under my bike for the same reason. I really love having full-fingered gloves, and I just wear my bike gloves throughout the race. I wear them trekking because you can move so much faster through the woods if your hands are protected, because you're constantly pushing stuff out from in front of your face, and you do that a lot more quickly if you've got protection on your hands. Same thing with paddling. I get blisters on my hands much more quickly than I get blisters on my feet. So it's super important for me to wear full-fingered gloves. A copy of your ID and a copy of your health insurance card. Those are behind my dollar bill because cash is the next thing actually. So copy of my photo ID, a copy of my health insurance card, and some cash are all in my little pack, my little dry bag. A bandana or a buff to clean things off, mainly my glasses or your hands, lubrication of some kind. So I've got my little personal hygiene box that always goes with me. I'm gonna angle this down a little bit so that you can see this stuff more than me. My little personal hygiene box. This goes in my, gets packed with me, and I've put a list of the things that stay in this box. So in here, I've got my little thing of insect repellent. I've got some sunscreen. I've got Afterbite, because bugs tend to love me. My Zanvel poison ivy wash. my run goo. Obviously, these are things I'm not carrying in my pack. These are things that I've got back at the transition area that I can access when I'm in transition or after the race. I'm going to use my poison ivy wash. Next item, food. So food and hydration. I've got my food box, and we're going to have another session with Liv later on where she talks about nutrition and hydration for races, and I'll let her tell you what the right things are to eat. What I'm going to tell you is I put in my food box things that I want to eat when I'm racing, because especially when I race with Sarah, I can bonk very easily, very quickly, and it gets really hard to chew and swallow food when you get in that situation. And so it actually is really hard to make yourself eat once you start to get overheated and dehydrated and all those things. So I put in stuff that I want to eat, that I know I'm going to want to continue eating. I always have some 5-hour energies in my food box, even for a race like 8 hours. I would probably, like 3 hours into the race, take a 5-hour energy drink. It's amazing how much it perks me up. The right stuff, this, especially for an August race where we're likely to get overheated, this basically is helping you replenish electrolytes. Here's a little pro tip. This is intended to be mixed with water. Don't take it straight, which I did just towards the end of a race 1 or 2 years ago, the no sleep race. I spent the next like 45 minutes, the last 45 minutes of that race, choking myself to death. They come in little packets that look like Rungu packets. So I thought it was just like Rungu. I thought I opened the packet and swigged this right stuff. I'd never had it. It's like this super highly concentrated salt electrolyte mix, basically. Yeah, and so I thought I was gonna die. I choked so hard. It will hit the back of your throat like lightning if you don't mix it with water. So it's intended to be mixed with water. I will say this, I got through the end of that race pushing hard when I wasn't sure that I was going to. So whatever your electrolyte mix is, and what I did was not advisable, like using this for the very first time in the last 45 like critical minutes of the race. We don't recommend that. This is always a do as I say and not as I do session, because I don't follow my own advice repeatedly, and it's to my detriment. But so whatever your electrolyte preference is, whether it's the E-tabs or Hammer Light or, you know, whatever, just make sure you've got something to replenish your electrolytes, because that's going to be super important for this race in August. Breath mints, a lot of these are Sarah Dahlman tips, and Sarah Dahlman's my teammate. I suspect a lot of you know her. She's this amazing ultra endurance athlete. She's won the Tour Divide a couple of times, and she does these, you know, couple 1,000-mile races. It's insane. So any advice you get from her is advice well taken. One of her little tricks, and this is especially good if you're doing like late night races, they wake you up. Breath mints, they make you just feel really refreshed when you're starting to feel down mentally. Breath mints really help. Ginger chews, these are ginger crystals that go in tea. That's good for hot stuff, but the little ginger chews are really great to settle your stomach. If you start to feel nauseated from dehydration and that sort of thing, again, that's going to be an issue for some of you undoubtedly in August. Ginger chews are great to settle your stomach. I always put some little hand wipes in here just so I can clean my hands off before I dig into my food box. I always have a little trash bag in there. Those are handy. So this is just my food box. I'm going to keep that in transition. I'm going to use it to pack my pack in the morning and have that sitting in the transition area when I come in with some food that looks appealing. You know, peanut butter on bagels, pack great. Just figure out what works for you. Sarah always cooks some cheese ravioli the night before and puts it in the refrigerator and has that in little Ziploc bags. Cheese ravioli, when you can't eat anything else, is like a miracle. Also, salted pepper, butter potatoes, little new potatoes in Ziploc bags. Those feel amazing. 8 hours is getting to that distance where you're probably, or the length of time that you're probably going to want some real food. And those things that are sort of bland but have some salt, have some butter, those go down really easily, really nicely. That last couple of hours of the race can keep you going. And then I've got my little bag full of different hydration bladders and bottles. So hydration bladder for this race, I'm going to recommend at least a 2-liter bladder. Sarah always carries a 3-liter bladder. It doesn't matter if she's going out for like a half-mile run. She goes to her mailbox, she's got a 3-liter bladder of water on her pack. And it's because she's super strong, and so she's happy to carry the weight. And because she has a deathly fear of dehydration and starvation. For me, I'm like, can't I just carry this little tiny water bottle that I got at this convention? Because water's heavy on your back, and it gets hot on your back. And so there's always that balance of make sure you take enough that you don't get dehydrated, that you've got what you need, but not so much that it in itself causes you to work so much harder and sweat so much more. So there's that fine line. For me, for an 8-hour race, a 2-liter bladder is sort of the perfect size. And then of course I'm going to supplement that with my big humongous bike bottle on the bike. I typically try to keep clear water in my hydration bladder, and then I put the good stuff in my bike bottles. So I'll have some great, Powerade, Gatorade, whatever. Good tasting lemonade is beautiful in the middle of a race in August, let me tell you. So I try to put good tasting stuff in my bike bottle, mainly because I don't want to have to try to clean out my bladder later from all that nasty stuff. So let's see, electrolytes, caffeine comes in my 5-hour energy, my small dry bag, I showed you that, my backpack. So what size pack? We talked a little bit about the fact that your role on the team, are you the mule or are you the anchor who knows which way to go, is going to dictate to some extent what size pack you need. For me, for an 8-hour race, I'm going to be able to get by with a pretty small pack. I would take this even if I were racing solo. So this is a great little Nathan pack. It's got pockets in the front. I highly recommend pockets in the front to make food accessible, because the more accessible your food and your drink, the more you're going to keep up with your nutrition and hydration, and that's critical to not bonking. Now this particular pack is not great for when I'm racing with Sarah, and I wonder, by itself anyway, I wonder if anybody can tell why it's not ideal for when I'm racing with Sarah.
No toe anchor.
Exactly. Katie said it. I don't have a waist belt, so there's nothing she can use to tow me. And she can do this, but then I'm being pulled forward like that. There's no toe anchor on this. And so if I were racing with Sarah, hey, looky there, I've got this great little handy waist pouch that I can wear that not only gives me more space for accessible food, which is good, but it also creates something that I can tie my toe line into. Because when you're racing as a team of 3, if you don't have a toe line, then you don't get the concept of team. Yeah, basically, Sarah tows me everywhere. We're walking through the mall, Sarah's got me on tow. Yeah, that's a joke. We don't go to the mall. I doubt Sarah's been to a mall in like 20 years. So yeah, I need something around my waist when I'm racing with Sarah, because she's going to be towing me. But as far as size of pack, you want accessible pockets in the front. My 2-liter bladder goes in here, and I'm not going to have a ton of extra gear beyond what's mandatory for an 8-hour race. This size pack is actually going to be really fine for me for an 8-hour race. It's going to hold my 2-liter pack. It's going to hold plenty of food for that length of race. And again, I'm not worried. Unless we had some, freakish cold front that comes through in August, I'm not worried about having lots of extra bulky socks and jackets and things for cold. So I want to keep my pack as small as I can, because I don't want the extra weight on my back. The extra coverage, as much as the weight, is a problem. When that's sitting on your back, it gets really hot. So if you find a pack that has the mesh that kind of holds the pack away from your back, that's going to be ideal if you do need a bigger pack. And then also, if your pack is too big, stuff bounces around a lot. Think about when you're trekking, if your pack isn't fully packed, you get all of that bouncing. So the key things are make sure your pack fits you well. Get one that's properly sized for the gear you're going to be taking, and make sure it's super functional, that you've got pockets in front, you can carry a hydration bladder, and then train with it. The very first adventure race I did, I was in super, super fit shape. I had finished a marathon. I qualified for Boston. I was in awesome running shape. I hadn't biked since I was 13, and that was disastrous. But the thing that really surprised me, I wasn't surprised that the bike kicked my butt. What surprised me was how quickly my shoulders got tired. And it's because, number one, my pack wasn't well fitted. I didn't have the pack weight resting down on my hips like I should have. But number two, I hadn't trained with it. You know, you don't train with a pack on, at least I didn't, for marathon training, and I certainly didn't run the marathon with a pack on. And so I was surprised at how quickly my shoulders fatigued.
Yeah. Marcy wrote a little note in advance of your comment there.
Workouts with packs are also helpful. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And what have you said? Loaded up with weights or bags of sugar. Yeah, after I got my butt kicked and my shoulders were worn out after that first race, I started doing exactly that. And people at the gym looked at me, you know, whatever. At least I thought they were. In truth, in hindsight, I know they weren't looking at me at all. They didn't care. They were doing their own thing. But don't worry if they do look at you funny. A treadmill workout with a pack on and a jug of water, pound of sugar, whatever, is perfect for this. And it gets your shoulders nice and trained up, and your upper back nice and strong, and it gets you used to carrying that weight, because it makes a big difference. Go out and walk to the end of your drive and back, and then put on even just a 10-pound pack and do the same thing, and you'll realize the necessity to train with some weight in your pack. It's super critical. This is an out there pack. These are sort of the pack of choice among adventure racers these days, and they are terrific. The nice thing about out there packs, well, they were designed by an adventure racer, so they're super functional. They've got these pockets on the front. They've got pockets around the waistband that come forward. They have that nice little waist belt that I can tie into with Sarah. Super functional pockets on the sides for water bottles. You can fit your helmet down in this outside pocket. It's super spacious. So this, to me, is a pack. If I'm doing a 12-hour race that has, in the cold, where I need the extra space to pack some layers, or if there are ropes elements, or, you know, for whatever reason I've got a lot more on my gear list, this is a great pack. I would use this pack for anything from 12 to 36 hours. Like, it would have to be a multi-day race for me to need something bigger than this. So this, to me, is a huge pack. The nice thing is they've got it in two sizes. They've got a small, medium size, and then they've got a medium, large size. So make sure you get one. And it's mainly the torso length that's the difference there. It's got some nice, these pads on the back help keep the middle of the pack kind of off your back. So it helps with cooling. It's a nice, lightweight, rugged fabric. So yeah, highly recommend the out there packs. They've got a couple of different models, again, a couple of different sizes. So that's a really great pack as well, we recommend. But whatever pack you get, Osprey makes a lot of women's specific packs. So the main thing is make sure that you're getting a pack where the length of it suits your torso. A women's specific pack or a pack that has different sizing is critical, because if your pack doesn't fit you well, you're going to suffer. You wear your hydration pack on road bike training. Yeah, you know, wearing your pack with weight in it on the bike is also super critical, right? Because it makes a huge difference when you're riding your bike with just your body weight versus riding your bike with pack weight. Is a big difference in helping get your sit bones and your saddle adjusted to that weight and used to that, so you don't feel bruised. Yeah, when I've been too long off the bike, that first bike ride, the first several bike rides back, I just, like, my bones feel bruised. And so if I do that in a race with a pack on, I suffer mightily. I've done it. I don't recommend it. Let's see what we've got next. My watch, I always have a watch. I don't rely on my phone for time in a race. My toiletries kit. So I don't think I have one of these put together, but oh, I know, I've got it, I think, in my medical lighting. Basically, I'm gonna have a little Ziploc with a little pack of travel Kleenex and some little packs of wet wipes. Yeah, and then if I'm on my period, I'm gonna have tampons in there, and I'm gonna have another little Ziploc bag to put spent tampons in. The things that we have to do as women racers that men don't have to deal with. But so that's a really efficient way to keep your little toilet kit. Trekking poles. I have a set of trekking poles that I bought for a 2-day race that we did out in California years ago. As a general rule, I don't use them. At least I haven't historically. I'm probably going to start using them more because I am not in the shape I was in when I first started adventure racing, and going up hills is getting harder all the time. If your goal is to go out and finish the race or to have fun or whatever those things, if your goal is not to be super, super fast for an 8-hour race, take trekking poles. There are plenty of hills, and you're going to appreciate having that assistance with your arms. It's going to help you move. If you're out there and you're trained up for a running pace, trekking poles are probably not going to be worthwhile for you. They're probably going to be in the way more than they are a help. So it just kind of depends on where you are. If you've got bad knees, whatever it is. And there are lots of different models of trekking poles out there. I'll be happy to answer, to let you know what kind I've got and what kind I recommend, if that's something that you're looking into. If you take any medication that you might need during the race, in particular an EpiPen, if you've got allergies and you carry an EpiPen, make sure you take your EpiPen with you. More importantly, make sure your teammates know where it is. If you do have allergies, make sure you've got Benadryl in your first aid kit, because Benadryl is a great first line treatment for that. But if you do have bad allergies such that you would carry an EpiPen, make sure your teammates know where it is. Make sure they know how to use it, right? Sarah carries one, and she always tells me where it is before the race. She says, here's my EpiPen. She's shown me how to use it, so I know what to do if she gets in trouble and I need to help her. I'm gonna get choked up thinking about that. When I think about teammates helping each other like that, and like when I think about something happening to Sarah that I would need to be able to help her, it gets me choked up. It's why I suggest everyone take a wilderness first aid course, because you don't want to be the teammate who needed to help your teammate and you didn't know how to do it. So I think everyone should take a wilderness first aid course so that you can be that hero to your teammate if she needs you. To be safe, should you carry both of the EpiPens? You mean EpiPens and a Benadryl?
Oh, so I have EpiPens, and they usually come in packs of 2 because they wear off after like 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh,
So
Sarah's always only had one, so I'm not aware of that, familiar with that. But yeah, I mean, if you've got 2, and if it's going to wear off in 15 to 20 minutes, then yeah, you probably are going to want both. For a race like this, there's a good possibility you can be more than 15 or 20 minutes away from help.
okay.
Yeah, and Danielle, you've got wilderness first aid training. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I used to be wilderness first responder too, and I would tell you that what we tell people about EpiPens is, yeah, make sure your teammates know how to use them. If you can't do that for yourself, but carry both. And obviously, you need to keep those as cool as you can. So I usually recommend putting those in a Ziploc with like a cold pouch, so you can keep those nice and cool. But yeah, for sure, carry both. And then obviously always Benadryl.
Yeah, thanks. That's good to know. So then maybe the place to carry it is going to be with the hydration bladder, like on the outside, so it's not right up against your body. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Stephanie, yeah. I would tell you yes. I carry EpiPens because I have a bee allergy, but my first line of defense, and I carry them. If you go to the pharmacy, you'll find little pill things. A lot of times they'll have 2, so I'll put some electrolytes in one side, and then the next side is going to be my Benadryl, maybe some ibuprofen and acetaminophen too. but I have those handy with the EpiPen. So my first line of defense is going to be Benadryl.
Right.
You know, if I get stung in a major body, like in my quad, but if I got stung in the face, I might be in trouble. So in the wilderness, first aid training is exactly that. Try the Benadryl first because you want to prolong, especially in the wilderness, because we don't know when, you know, rescue will come. And then see if the one EpiPen helps with the Benadryl, and then you have the second one available. And you're exactly right. That's where I put my EpiPens for when they're a little bit protected. I'll put them in, just as you said, here's my big pack in the bladder so they stay cooler, and just make sure everybody does, like you said, know where they are at.
Yeah, cool, good. Paula, we saw your note. It's great to hear from you. We'll see you later. Enjoy Pilates. Okay, so I'm going to move over to the team gear list, and I'm going to go through this more quickly. Lighter or other waterproof fire starter. Again, these are things that just one team member has to have, but I'm always going to have that in my little clear bag so I can show it quickly. A compass, of course, I'm going to have around my neck or on my wrist, and I'm going to show you my navigation kit in a minute. Operable cell phone and waterproof container. We know someone who was the team member charged with carrying a cell phone for the team one time, and his team got in trouble. And this was one of the races I was directing. His team got in trouble, and they said, okay, get the cell phone out, call Stephanie. And he very sheepishly told them all that what he had brought was some cheap old cell phone that didn't even have a battery in it because he was trying to save weight and didn't want to ruin a good cell phone. And so there they sat needing, you know, in this day and age, a cell phone is the #1 piece of safety gear you can take because, right? Yeah, #1 piece of safety gear you can take. Make sure your cell phone's fully charged and that it works, and put it in a waterproof container. Okay, water purification. There's going to be plenty of surface water out there. For an 8-hour race, you're probably going to be able to take enough water, carry it with you that you won't need to purify. But this is such a small, easy little thing to carry with you that you absolutely should always have water purification with you and know how to use it. So whatever system you use, I always use just the little bottles of the tablets, and I've got my first aid kit's coming up right now anyway. So Adventure Medical Kit Ultralight 0.7 is on our mandatory gear list. This is what it looks like. And the first aid gear itself is in a little waterproof pouch inside this bigger pouch. So that's the actual first aid gear. If you want to put your own together, that's fine. Just go online and look at what's in this kit and make sure that you have something similar. Now, you probably will want to have other stuff that's not in here with you. Sarah and I always have extra things that aren't necessarily in this kit. Her EpiPen is one. We always have extra Benadryl. We've always got some Aleve. So, you know, it kind of depends on the particular race. We usually are going to have extra bandages. If it's a longer race, we're probably going to have a small piece of ACE bandage, things like that. So don't skimp on your first aid kit. Again, for an 8-hour race, it's less critical, but make sure you've at least got what's in there. So the little first aid kit's inside there. And then you'll see I've got these notes on mine about the other things that I have in here. So the other things that I keep in this particular kit are a pair of hand warmers. Again, I'm not going to carry that for an August race, but I've got my water purification tablets. They're in there. These come usually, you can get these in, there are 2 bottles that come in the little kits. One is the iodine and the other one is the stuff that sort of takes that nasty taste out and makes it taste better. Yeah, I just carry this. That's a little space saving and weight saving. I'm like, I don't care if the water tastes bad as long as it doesn't kill me. And so I always just carry the one little iodine tablets. These need 30 minutes to work to actually clean your water, which is why it's always great to have at least 1 bike bottle in someone's pack. If you have only a hydration bladder and you do need to treat water, then you're going to have to fill that hydration bladder, drop these in there. It's going to be 30 minutes before you can drink out of that bladder. So I suggest that someone have, you know, it can be an empty bike bottle if you want at the start. If you think it's just sort of gratuitous and you won't need it, it can be empty so you're not carrying the extra weight. But then if you do need to treat, you've got a bike bottle that you can fill. As you see that you're starting to get low, you can go ahead and treat it in that bike bottle, and you've still got whatever you've got left in your hydration bladder while that's purifying. So in my little thing, I also have my money in there. I've got some bug repellent wipes that are great. I keep my space blanket in there, my money, my Kleenex, my lighter, my water purifier. So I have my little note on the outside that tells me everything that goes in there besides my first aid kit. And so, you know, this is going to be my, you know, something like I would carry for the FIG. You know, a 12-hour race in November, I'm probably going to need hand warmers. I'm probably going to have a space blanket on my gear list, that sort of thing. So I'm going to keep all those with my first aid kit in there.
Hey, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I was going to tell you something I've always carried, and I recommend everybody, or at least one person on the team, carry it. You know the tiny little tubes of icing that you put on a cake, like to write on a cake?
Yeah.
I always carry one of those in the first aid kit, and the reason I carry that is if you were in the backcountry and somebody is having they're diabetic, and it doesn't need to be your team member, it can be anybody, and you come upon them and they are not responsive, you can give them that icing. You can squeeze it in their mouth. If they have too much sugar, it's just going to be a drop in the bucket. If they are low on sugar, it can save their life. So that is a really small thing to carry that can save somebody's life. I've seen it happen, and it's an easy, and it's, you know, like the sugar pills and stuff you can't chew. So icing in their mouth.
Nice. That's a great tip. Thanks, Danielle. I hadn't even thought about that, and that's not something that we typically have in our first aid kit. So that's yeah, that's super helpful. And certainly if you know that your teammate's diabetic, right, then they're going to presumably have some extra things that they're carrying with them anyway. But yeah, make sure if you have a medical condition, if you've got issues like that, make sure your teammates know what they are and how they can help you if you run into problems. Okay, so moving now to my blue items on the team list. This is not a mandatory piece of gear. I probably should make this a mandatory piece of gear. You certainly should not do the race without some way to waterproof your stuff. Waterproof map case. I've got here a couple of different options. So this one is a seal line case with the Ziploc top. This is not my preferred map case to carry my main map and instructions and all that in, mainly because I find getting in and out of this Ziploc top to be kind of cumbersome. And once I've opened this, unless I've got everything inside in a Ziploc, and you'll see I did that with this, then I'm exposing everything to the elements again. So, you know, no waterproof map case is waterproof when it's open. And so what we want to do is make sure that we minimize the number of times we have to get into it, and that we have everything inside our map case. If it's not waterproof, this is a waterproof My Topo map, so I didn't waterproof this. I didn't have to worry about that. But I also had in here, you'll see a separate little paper map that I put in a piece of Ziploc, so that if I have to open this to refold my map, I'm not exposing my non-waterproof item to the elements each time. Again, this is my favorite map case I've kept now. This was one of my early ones, and I've kept it because I like this for the paddle. So if I've got separate maps, then, and I've got one that's I can use specifically for the paddle, then I'm going to put my paddling map in here and seal it up, because this seal line is super waterproof. Once I get that thing sealed up, I don't care if I drop this in the water. It's going to stay really waterproof. It's a nicely waterproofed map. So it's great for the paddle. And I'm going to put my paddling map in there and attach it to the gunnel or something in front of me. If I've got my pack sitting in the boat, I'm going to have this sitting on that, and make sure you secure it. Right? Anything that you put in the boat, you need to be sure that you secure. So I've got a string on here that I'm going to use to girth hitch this to the gunnel or to my pack, and make sure it's secure and it's sitting right in front of me in the boat so I can see it to navigate. The map case that I use for trekking and biking and otherwise is this one that I prefer. The brand is called Locksack, L-O-K-S-A-K, Locksack. And what this is basically a zippered pouch. So what I love is that's a lot easier to do than getting into that Ziploc, the Velcro top. So that nice zippered pouch, now what that should tell you is this is not waterproof, right? If I just stick a paper map down in here and zip that, that's certainly not waterproof. How Locksack is designed to work is they also sell individual, it's basically the equivalent of a Ziploc bag, but it's a higher grade material and it's reusable, a little more durable, the way it works. You get a few of those when you buy this system, you get a few of those inner lock sacks with it. Once you've gone through those and they've worn out, I just use Ziploc bags. So the nice thing about it is then I can put all of my individual components in their own Ziploc bag. I can get in and out of this quickly and easily and shuffle through those as much as I need to, and I don't degrade those because they're all individually waterproofed in their Ziploc bag. So that's my own preferred system. There are lots of others. That's the one I like. Let's see if my nav kit is next. Sharpie marker. I always have a Sharpie marker. That was in my little, this little guy. Those little tiny short Sharpies are perfect for this. Plotter, yardstick, ink pen. If you're plotting your own CPs, they'll tell you what the scale is so that you have the right plotter. The reason I put yardstick on there is because I did a race one time where the race director had forgotten to ask for the UTM grid lines to be put on the map. And so we got a map that had the hash marks on the side, but there were no actual grid lines. And so in order to plot your points, you had to draw the grid lines on first. So ever after, we always take a yardstick just in case we should have to do that. You will not have to do that for the Unbridled race. You won't have to plot. All the points will be on the map for you. A tow system, we talked about, don't leave home without it. What Sarah and I use is just some surgical tubing with a carabiner on both ends. And so, yeah, our length of tubing is probably about 3 feet long, but then it stretches to be longer than that. And it's a fairly thick surgical tubing, so it's super durable, but it gives you some stretch. You don't want something without stretch because you need that little bit of give in there. Duct tape. So duct tape is good for so many things. What I do is I take duct tape and I wrap it around a golf pencil. That's one of those little short pencils like you get at the putt-putt course. And it's kind of handy if you need to write something. And so I have that, and it also works great as the little pin for to wrap my duct tape around. Let's see. Sunscreen, bug spray. You're absolutely going to want those for an August race. You can get, you know, the little travel size of those to take with you. The little bug spray wipes work nicely, and they're flat, easy to carry. Then those were all my blue item, my highlighted blue items. Now I'm getting to the unhighlighted items. These are just luxury things, comfort, convenience things that I'm going to have in the transition area. That's going to be a folding table so that I can spread my stuff out, plan my course. You know, if I'm plotting especially, I'm going to want that. But a folding table just to get you up off the ground in the transition area, and chairs to go with that. A mat. Sarah got me this fabulous mat for Christmas, which is nice because my old one had gotten so manky. But this is one of those mats that's plastic on one side and fleece on the other. Spreading this out in a transition area so you can keep all your stuff off the ground, especially if it's wet. When you're changing shoes and socks or whatever it is, being able to sit down on a nice clean mat and keep your socks clean is such a comfort. A cooler for the transition area. It makes a great little seat as well if you get the right size. And you're definitely going to want cold drinks back in your transition area for this race. Zip ties, we actually always have zip ties, a few in our packs with us as well, but definitely in the TA. Now the nav kit. So here is my navigation kit. Racers, adventure racers love boxes with lots of little spaces, don't we? Lots of little ways to organize things. So this is my nav kit. What I've got in here is a hole punch, actually 3 hole punches, because we also love redundancy apparently. So I have 3 hole punches, which we use to punch holes in our punch card. I should have brought a punch card with me. So for this race, you're going to have a little Tyvek punch card. It's going to be about 4 inches by 4 inches, made out of Tyvek, so it'll be rugged, heavy duty, waterproof. You can't rip it. And it's got little boxes in it. And so when you get to each checkpoint, you're going to use a punch at that checkpoint to punch that Tyvek. And there's a pin pattern on the punch. And so that pin pattern punches into your Tyvek passport. And that's how we know that you are at that location. And so what we use this hole punch for is to punch holes in the top of that little Tyvek passport. And the reason we do that is because we then attach our passport to a badge reel. So this little badge reel is what you get if you go to a conference, or, you know, the janitors always put their keys on these when we were in elementary school. Whoop, it does that, right? So we punch a couple of holes in the top of our passport. We put that through, the snap goes through, we do that. And then because we are hyper vigilant about taking care of our passport, people lose passports all the time. You need to think in advance about how you're going to keep up with your passport. You do not want to put it in a pocket that's not zippered. I don't even like to put it in zippered pockets because it's just too easy to like not zip it up. And again, people lose passports all the time. You don't want to lose your passport and lose all of the points. You can't prove that you went to any of those unless your goal is just fun, in which case you go, oh, well, that's a shame. We know we were there. If your goal is win, you better make sure you keep your passport, because you can't win if you don't come back with a passport. Have I emphasized that enough? So
It's painful, it hurts.
it does. It hurts to lose your passport, and it hurts me not to be able to give you those points when I know you were there. So we put that through. It snaps because we don't trust that snap. We don't trust that this clip is going to stay clipped on. So we'll clip this onto the pack, but because we don't trust any of that, because we're fretting kind of people when it comes to our passport, we also then will take some little strips of duct tape and we duct tape around that snap and we duct tape around that clip. So that's, if you want to be hyper vigilant, that's what you do with your passport. In our map case, we also have multiple compasses. Thank you, Katie. The lovely Katie Drinkhouse. So this is a standard base plate compass. This is a Sunto, probably M3, M2 or M3. Let me see. Probably a Sunto M3 if I had to guess. This is a really great, sturdy compass that can last you a lifetime. A base plate compass like this. Oh, here's a new one that hasn't rubbed off the stuff. Definitely an M3. This is a great little compass. It will serve your purposes for adventure racing just fine. If you can see here, yeah. So see that arrow right there? I made that arrow on there with reflective tape. You can buy like Scotch 3M brand makes these reflective strips that you can buy. I suggest you get some of those and put them on all kinds of gear. In fact, I meant to point out on my Out There pack, I've got a strip of reflective gear. The one complaint I had about these Out There packs is they didn't have any reflective anything on them. So if you see that strip right there, that's a strip of 3M reflective tape that I put on there because when we're out biking at night, I want to be as visible as I can possibly be. And so we have this reflective tape on everything. We've got it on packs, we've got it on helmets, we've got it on phones, we've got it on compasses, because the other thing is if you drop this thing in the middle of the night, you're never going to find it again. Your only hope is if you've got some reflective stuff on it. This also has a glow in the dark dial actually, so that helps. But where do you get that passport clip? You know, it's all it is a little badge reel. You can get it at any office supply store, you know, Staples, whatever. It's just a little badge reel. Yeah. So this is also, you'll see it's pointing in the direction of travel, and we're going to do compass. We're going to talk about navigation and compasses and stuff in another session later. But the reason I've got this pointed like that is because when I'm navigating at night, that's highlighting for me my direction of travel because I can't see the rest of the base plate very well. And so that's just a nice little feature to have on there at night. So a little base plate compass like that is perfect. I also always have as my backup and a second convenient tool, this little wrist compass. So I've got my watch on one wrist, I've got my wrist compass on the other wrist. And the great thing about a wrist compass is that when you're mountain biking, you can look at it and you don't have to try to pull your base plate compass up. Same thing with paddling. You can real quickly level out your compass on your wrist and see what direction you're going, and it keeps you hands-free so you don't have to pull that base plate compass up and look at it. Those of you who have been doing some orienteering may use thumb compasses. Thumb compasses are great for orienteering. I never use them in adventure racing because we use our hands so much, and I figure I'm likely to lose it. A little Scale-X. I always have this. This is a little digital Scale-X. I don't have the batteries in it. I don't store any of my electronic gear with the batteries in it because it gets corroded. We don't use them frequently enough. So I always store my stuff with the batteries out, but the batteries are in my kit that I need, and I've got written on there 2 times AAA. So I make sure I've always got some fresh batteries for that. This is a little Scale-X model. I think this was about $29 when I bought it, however many years ago. It's called Plan Wheel SA2. I don't know what model they have now, and that's not really focusing, but it's the Scale-X Plan Wheel SA2. And it's a little intimidating at first to figure out how to use it, but it comes with good directions. And once you get the hang of it, if you're doing a 1 to 24,000 map, especially, which is what we tend to use a lot, then you're gonna you'll figure it out, and then you'll have it, and it'll be really handy. But if you have any questions about how to use it, I'll be happy to show you what I know with it. It's super handy because you can use this to measure out your distances beforehand. So when you're doing your map planning and route planning, you can figure out what the different route distances are. And then also, if you write those on your map, if you know it's exactly 1.2 miles to the next turn, you write that on your map. And then when you're out there in the field, instead of trying to estimate, you can say, okay, Sarah, tell me on your bike computer when we get to 1.2 miles. So lots of highlighters, lots of markers, a pair of scissors if I need to cut down part of my instructions or map that has extra stuff on it. I've got plotters in there in case I need plotting. That's my basic navigation kit. If you've got any questions about that, feel free to post them. Katie will take a look for that. Packing tape, that was not in my kit because it's too big, but it's in my box. Packing tape so that you can waterproof stuff that's not waterproof, like you'll get instructions for this race and they undoubtedly will not be waterproofed. So I always take packing tape on both sides of that. So then I've got my instructions waterproofed and they can go on my map case and I don't worry about those getting destroyed. Poison ivy wash, I've always got that in my kit for the end. Some bungees. I love these little, these always go in my box. The bungees with the little balls on the end. These are especially great if you change shoes, if you wear bike shoes and then trekking shoes, for example, and you're gonna go out on a bike leg and you know that there's gonna be a trek in the middle of it. So you wanna pack your trekking shoes. Or if you're going to be trekking and you are going to have your bike helmet on your pack, these are great ways to secure stuff to your pack. So I always have a couple of those in transition. And then as I plan out the course, if I know I'm going to have to do any of that, I'll make sure that these go in my pack with me. Especially if I'm carrying some little tiny pack like this, I certainly am not going to get much packed on there without something to secure it. So little bungees like that are awesome. Trash bags, like I said, trash bags are great, not just for the end of the race when you've got all these stinky clothes that are wet and yucky. They're also great if you need to stage. For example, you've brought your own PFD and paddle, or you're going to be staging your bikes at some remote transition area, whatever, and you've got your helmet and your shoes that you're allowed to stage with it. Trash bags are great for bundling the whole team stuff together. I also put flagging beside that. By flagging, I mean this like surveyor's flagging tape, stuff like that. just whatever, we'll use that. So Sarah and I, if everyone's gear is out here in the middle of a bike transition area and we want to really quickly locate ours, we'll put it in a trash bag and we'll put our special color flagging around that so that we can really easily identify it. You know, whether it's hot pink, get some funky color, put your team's name on it and flag it up, and then we can really easily identify our stuff in the transition area. And again, we're just saving minutes and minutes and minutes, not having to spend time looking for that. So that's all the individual gear, team gear. For the bike, a mountain bike, we don't allow cyclocross bikes. Different directors have different rules about that. The general consensus is that people are not allowing cyclocross bikes. You certainly don't want that for this Carter Caves race anyway, because there's some mountain biking trails that you would not want to be on a cyclocross bike on. You need a good bike helmet. Again, you want reflective tape on that. Flashing red rear light. This isn't going to be that critical for this race because we're going to not be on any main roads. We're going to be on some park roads and trails and all of that. But if you're riding either in training out on the road or doing any other race where you're going to be out on roads, do not skimp on the flashing rear red light. And I highly suggest that if you have one, you take it out tonight with your bike and get about 300 meters away from your bike with that flashing red light on and see what it looks like, because I am continually amazed at these wimpy little lights and their batteries are dying. And so you're telling someone, turn your light on, and they're like, it is on. And you're going, well, guess what? You're totally invisible. You can't see it. So do not skimp on that flashing red rear light, especially when you're out training. There are people out there who, they're not trying to kill you. They just can't help themselves. Yeah, it's so dangerous anymore with everyone texting and driving. I say stay off the roads as much as you can, but if you're going to be on the road, make sure your red rear light is like, a neon sign. Okay, so that's the mandatory individual bike gear. Then we also say you need to have a quick link. I know Marcy Ritzer has one in her pack now, in her little bike wedge. Make sure you have a quick link in case you break a chain, and make sure you know how to use it. Yeah, so Diane has asked a brand of light. So for trekking, there's so many options out there.
I think she means the rear light.
Oh, yeah, for the red rear light. You know what, mine, what's the brand? Mine's on my bike downstairs.
I'd recommend Bontrager. It's what I sell. They have lights that can be seen from 2 kilometers, which is 1.6 miles, and the run times on them are really long. And what happens with bike lights is they tend to, if they're really bright and they have a wide focus, they tend not to be as long of a range. These are optimized, the lens on them, so you can see them further. So check out Bontrager. Come by Schellers. I'll help you out.
There you go.
That's the Night Rider's another one too. Yeah.
Yes. Schellers Cycling and Fitness, that's SCHELLERS in Lexington, carries lights. And what she was saying was Bontrager. I've typed it out right there for you.
And Marcy has a funny comment.
Yeah, Marcy says, for the love of all that is good in the world, carry a quick link. We had our training weekend last year, and poor Marcy, her chain broke twice, and we were trying to put the chain back together without a quick link, and it's a lot harder without a quick link. Make sure your multi-tool, your bike multi-tool, has a chain tool on it, and then have a quick link. And with a quick link and a chain tool, a broken chain not only does not have to knock you out of the race, but you don't have to lose a lot of time. What you do need to know is how to use it. And Daniil is actually going to lead us through that in a later session as well. We're going to have a session all about trailside bike maintenance and repair, trailside repair, bike maintenance before you get there. And so yeah, just make sure, practice it. Go to your local bike shop, have them show you how to do it, practice it, and then it doesn't have to be a race-ending event for you. So a quick link, bike bottles, we've talked about that. A bike lock, you're probably going to have that when you leave home anyway, but again, for this race, you're not going to need a bike lock during the race, but in some you might, and they'll tell you in advance if you're going to be in areas where you might have to leave your bike and go out on foot where you might have concerns. If so, you might want to invest in just a really thin, lightweight bike clock that will can go through everyone's bikes. And Hallie has said maybe a spare rear derailleur hanger. Yeah, that's also potentially a race-ending thing. You can always turn your bike into a single speed, and we'll ask Daniil to cover that when we have that trail side repairs. But if rear derailleur hanger, that's the little piece on the back of your bike, and those tend to, in wrecks, they can really easily get bent out of shape or break. And that can sometimes be a race-ending thing, but if you've got a spare and you know how to put it on, then that can really save your race. So a spare rear derailleur hanger is also a good idea. And we'll have Daniil talk when we have that trailside repair and maintenance clinic later. Daniil will go into a lot more detail about some of those things that you want in your bike pack. She's given us a thumbs up. And she'll show us how to do it, because that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you have all this gear. If you don't know how to use it, then it doesn't do you any good. So for team gear on the bike, a spare bike tube, and really that's something that ought to be per individual. I only made it per team on this one because it's a relatively shorter race. Really, everyone should have their own bike tube, and that's especially true if you have different size tires, right? It's not going to do you any good if your teammate has a spare bike tube if it doesn't fit the size tire that you have. So make sure that you've got a bike tube that fits your bike and that you know how to replace it. If you get a flat, do you know how to change a flat? Again, that's something that we'll go over in a subsequent clinic, but it's also something you can go to your local bike shop and they're going to be more than happy to show you how to change your bike tube, especially if you buy a few tubes and some tools while you're there. So then you need something to inflate that, a bike pump or a CO2 inflator, ideally, because we're sort of planners, Sarah and I, we usually have both. We always want a bike pump because you can't run out of bike pump. You can run out of CO2 cartridges.
The roses are fading. They only lasted a week.
So then under the recommended gear, did I just hit unmute? Okay. Under recommended gear per team, a bike computer. These are allowed. We don't allow GPS in races, and we don't allow pedometers. I'm not really sure why this distinction was ever made, but it has been. We don't allow you to wear something that's going to tell you how far you've traveled on foot, but we do allow you to use a bike computer that will tell you how far you've gone on bike. Again, I don't know why this distinction's been made, honestly, but I suppose because pace counting on foot is a skill, it's a navigation skill, and so we're testing that by telling you you can't have a pedometer. There's really no similar skill for telling your distance on a bike. You can't count the number of revolutions that your bike tire goes. And so we allow you to have a bike computer, even though not a pedometer. And in fact, we highly recommend a bike computer because it's a great navigational tool. If you know that you need to go 1.2 miles to your next turn, that's a great tool to have. So a bike computer, really handy, especially since there are 3 of you, for more than one person to have it, because this is also something that tends to fly off unnoticed or unfound. People lose the little piece of their bike computer all the time. So having 2 would actually be a great idea. A map board for your bike handlebars. And there are a couple of different main brands that people buy. You can also make one homemade. If you're interested in some suggestions for how to do that, I'll let you know. Wrist compass, I've already said. Okay, moving to the paddle. Yeah, wrist compass for the bike. Moving to the paddle. Canoe, paddle, and PFD, we're providing all of those for this race. If you have your own PFD and your own paddle, you're welcome to bring those. People ask about paddles. I've got one that's got a carbon fiber handle, and then it's got basically plastic blades, whatever the composite material is on the end. It's an aquabound. It's a 4-piece breakdown. I almost never break it down into 4. I usually just break it down into 2. The downside to having a 4-piece paddle is those are more joints to start to become loose, and then you lose efficiency as they become loose. At the same time, if you're in a race where you're going to have to carry your paddle for an extended distance, it's super handy if you can break it down into 4 pieces. The Aquabound 4-piece that I've got is probably about $150 paddle. So it's not, you know, Epic makes that fabulous all carbon fiber wing paddle that's I don't know, $400 or something. You don't need that to paddle a good race. And, you know, the paddling for the Unbridled race is going to be short enough that there's not any reason to go out and spend $400 on a paddle. If it turns out that you love it and you want the best paddle there is out there, you can do that later, but you won't need that for this race. You know, you can expect to be paddling, you know, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes, depending on your efficiency. Still, it's an area where lots of people lose time because they don't train for this and they underestimate the skill level required to be an efficient paddler. So I do suggest that you get in some training. We're going to have a training weekend for paddling at Grayson Lake, and it's a beautiful place. So you can go enjoy some beautiful scenery around that lake and also get in some training. That's the nice thing about paddling, is it's some of the prettiest training that you can do if you go to the right places. Chem lights, this is, so I'm getting now into my blue areas on the thing. Chem lights are not going to be needed in this race, but they're often mandatory. A third or a middle canoe seat, that is something that you'll probably want to think about for this race. The boats that you're going to get will be 2-seat boats, and all 3 of you will need to be in one boat. So one of you is going to have to sit in the middle. They make these nice little sling seats that just hook on to the sides, and you know, they've got some flexibility in terms of how wide they are. So they'll fit a lot of different style boats. Those are really handy. They're super lightweight. If you're going to have to carry it in a race, you won't have to carry your paddle gear far at all in this race. So, you know, one of the heavier plastic middle seats will work fine. You can always fashion something using, I've seen people use little, some of those throw cushions that are the little square cushions like you have on boats. I've seen people take like 4 of those and duct tape them together to make a big cube to sit on in the middle. A milk crate, I've seen people sitting on milk crates. Those work just fine. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but you probably do want something for that middle paddler to be able to get up so that they can actually get some rotation and get the paddle on the water so that they can help paddle. Sunglasses and a sun hat, ball cap, whatever on the water are great. And then in my, you know, these are a convenience, a baler and a sponge are often handy. Again, the paddle here is not going to be rough water. It's not going to be so long that you're going to fill up with a lot of water, but on a windy day, like at East Fork, for example, you can get a lot of water in your boat without tipping over. And if you're going to be out there for a while, you don't want to have to carry that with you. So a marine compass, if you're going to be on a huge lake like East Fork, for example, a marine compass can be handy to know which way you're going. Again, not that significant. The lake that we're going to be on is pretty linear. Painter's line. A painter's line is just a piece of rope that you attach to the front of the boat. So you can use that if you're having to slog through a really shallow spot. It's a lot easier to pull that line than to have to reach down and drag the boat. If you have to get out of the boat and run up onto the shore to punch a point that's a little higher up, the painter's line gives you something to tie your boat to the shore so it doesn't take off without you. So those are always handy things to have. And then I just talk a little bit about clothing. So any questions, and I'm going to run through super quick on the clothing.